It's a crossover episode of Locked On Celtics, bringing in the hosts of Locked On Nets to talk about the matchup, how this thing is going to go, and you'll watch me piss them off with my predictions right now on the Locked On Celtics podcast.
Be ever ready. Recognize the city of champs. Boston, baby, we do what you can't. Locked on number 18, Tatum and Brown, J-team, step back. We gon' wet that and slay teams. Of course the Celtics, who else could it be? Screaming like KG with the Larry O.B. Karalis above average, assessing the team status. Best daily pod, no cap, salary matching. Clutch like Bird the DJ, keep John on replay. Prime time, dapping up the truth on the sideline. Raining J's, how it started, raising banners, how we finished. Locked on Celtics pod, home of the winners. B.
Hey, welcome back to the Locked On Celtics podcast. Thank you for making the show part of your daily routine. I'm here for you Monday through Friday, and this can be your first listen every day. Take it with you in the car, download it, bring it with you on your commute, wherever you're going, whatever you're doing. I appreciate you bringing me along. I'm John Karalis. I cover the Celtics for Boston Sports Journal. I've written a book called The Boston Celtics All-Time All-Stars, and I was one of the voters, media voters, for the Celtics 75th anniversary team. Today's show is a big crossover episode. Adam Armbrecht, Doug Norrie of Locked On Nets hopped on with them to talk about this series. Well, let's just dive into it.
First crack at the bat here. Are you super excited to break down this matchup come Sunday?
Very excited for this 5-game series.
That could be interpreted a couple different ways. I like that.
I think you guys are going to love that game that you win. Yeah, win the opener. I think the solid format. Obviously, Doug, you're here as well, as we're going to dive into all the key pieces that we want to break down for Sunday's game. We've seen some line movement that we'll get in here along the way, but just initially, do you think this is as even keel as general NBA, we'll call them pundits, are indicating? Because this is not your traditional 7 versus 2 matchup. This is not the old, Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving do not come in as a 7 seed in the Eastern Conference playoffs.
No, that's true. They do not. They would probably be at least the 6 seed. I'm sorry. There's going to be.
We got 30 minutes here, John. We got a whole show to get through here.
Yeah, don't worry. Coming in hot. No, this is going to be tough. It's the way I see this series kind of going is the Celtics are basically going to have to weather whatever storm Durant and Kyrie bring. If they can weather that storm and just keep marching, they'll be okay. Because I really feel like KD and Kyrie give you a chance. And if there's a game where everyone else, if Curry and Brown or somebody else, if Claxton, come in and give you a nice game, then okay, maybe you can win that game. But if the Celtics can handle what KD and Kyrie bring and hold everyone else just in check, then I think the Celtics have ways to exploit the Brooklyn Nets. So I don't think it's a typical 2-7. I also don't think it's quite as even as some people might want to make it out to be.
You call that a 7-2, John, when you're referring to the series. Doug, do you think that the pick your poison mentality after Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, because we've done some crossovers here leading up to this and started to break down the series, is that a smart move to try to limit Kevin Durant or Kyrie Irving? Sure. But Seth Curry, Bruce Brown, the supporting cast for the Brooklyn Nets, as we talk about all the time, have, at least of late down the stretch, shown that they are more than capable of stepping up in those big moments.
Yeah, that's what most teams' operating procedure is probably going to be, right? That's going to be what every team wants to do, is limiting Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. But that's also like saying, I'm going to stop the flood. Of course, you're trying to stop with putting a couple sandbags up. You can have a strategy around that. It doesn't necessarily always play out that way. And so I think when you're talking about singular talents like these two guys, that strategy, I think, is correct, except that executing it becomes inordinately difficult over time, especially if you get even anything from the supporting cast, which we have seen of late has held up pretty well, right? So I think it's I'm with John that maybe John's pretty confident here that it's because he sounds very confident around a Boston maybe be able to walk pretty quickly through this, which I actually find pretty interesting. And I'm not, I just don't, I guess I just don't see it that way. I see this I see this as an even matchup, though, for reasons that are interesting because the teams are built like two completely different ways, which sometimes I think makes it hard to evaluate in a vacuum or a non-vacuum, what it is each team is bringing. So I see it close. I see it closer, but only because the teams are so diametrically opposed, sort of in like how they're going about their business.
Yeah.
Go ahead, John.
I'm sorry. I'm looking at it as simply when you look at both teams at their best, the Brooklyn offense is obviously very, very good. Boston's offense is kind of right there. When the past few months, you look at I'm just saying, look at the offensive ratings. Boston's offensive rating over the past 3 months has been, I think, at the top or near the top of the league. Like, I'm not sure that people really fully understand. Boston's offense has been one of the best offenses in the NBA in the calendar year 2022. With this whole turnaround, with everything, and especially over the past couple months, the way they've been playing, their offense is elite. And so is Brooklyn's, fine. But Boston's defense, also elite. Brooklyn's, not so much. And this is where things are going to swing. I can see this being 1 quarter, 2 quarters of Brooklyn asserting itself. 3rd quarter, oh no, things start to change. 4th quarter, Boston really just like wears you down. Because honestly, I don't see how Brooklyn has a chance if Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving don't play 46 minutes in this game, or in any of these games. If you sit down Durant, you're giving up a 15-0 run. Like that's going to happen. And you just can't afford that. Now, the Celtics are also going to give up 15-0 runs because Kevin Durant is awesome. But I think the Celtics have a better chance of answering those versus Brooklyn on the back end of these games when they've been hitting Kyrie with picks and they've been hitting Durant with picks. And Boston's one of the more physical teams. And Ime Udoka has said about his physical style, they can't call every single foul. So let's just go there and hit them. He said it today. Our strategy is to punch first. The Celtics are going to be a physical team. They're going to try to wear Brooklyn down. So Kyrie could go perfect in the first half like he did in the play-in game, but is he going to go 0 for the 4th quarter or 2 for the 4th quarter? Like that's where I see things really starting to show themselves between these two teams.
So I want to go a little bit deeper on the matchups, the defense that Boston will try to utilize. We know there's some areas that the Nets have struggled. We'll get into that in a second. And then what it sounds like is the secondary players, right? The bench unit that's going to come in here where you see Boston being able to get those leads, surge back if they're behind, then ultimately build on that. But I wanted to quickly touch on something that we talked about last episode. Doug had given some great stats around the elite defense of Boston and then the proverbial clutch gene. And it's not, this isn't like a mythical clutch performance. This is statistical information around the last 5 minutes of the 4th quarter and in overtime, where Brooklyn has been very strong in that area. And I just wanted to get your take around Boston and late game performances. You mentioned how good they've been down the back half of this season. They've had a lot of blowouts. Now, that's a great thing because you haven't been in tight games, but in those opportunities, they haven't necessarily showcased that they are elite on the offensive end when it matters most.
Yeah, that's certainly the numbers look terrible as far as that goes. And I will say that they are a bit skewed because they obviously include the full season, and like that November, December, where they were blowing 4th quarter leads like crazy. Like that team is not this team. It doesn't have Schroeder, doesn't have Richardson. It's healthy minus Robert Williams, which I'm sure you're going to want to get to. It's a different team. However, they have close losses to Dallas. They have a couple of other close losses in there where you can say, hey, crunch time offense is a bit of an issue. After the last close loss, I forget which game it was, but we're in their post game, and Ime and Al Horford and all those guys were actually upbeat because they were like, this is good for us. This is good for us to get. Basically, they were saying it's good for us to get this film and get this out of the way now because we're going to need to be able to be better than this in the playoffs. So that's going to be a real wild card for the Celtics. If they get lulled into a ISO versus ISO matchup and basically a big game of 2-on-2, then this is a toss-up series, and I would not be surprised by any result. But if the Celtics play their normal offense, which is Tatum drawing to, if you're going to blitz, because I think Brooklyn's probably going to blitz a lot, You blitz Tatum, you get the ball out of his hands, but then the ball pops around and you find the openings after that. You put the Nets into rotation. If you can keep doing that in the fourth quarter, then you'll still find good shots, and it might even get back into Tatum's hands. So as far as I know the numbers, and I'm not going to argue the numbers, but I will say that there's this team stepping into this series is different than what a lot of those numbers show. It's just a matter of, can they get past these most recent kind of miscues at the end of games? They seem confident that they can.
Go ahead, Doug, because then after this, I think the next thing we want to come back into is going to be the defense on both sides of the ball and how Brooklyn will approach Tatum and the way that the Celtics are going to try to look to take the ball out of the hands of Kyrie and KD.
Yeah, just to I'll quickly respond to that. Like, so just running the numbers from February 1st on, Boston still kind of does fall down in this effective field goal percentage near at the end of the games, like in these clutch situations. I will say though, it's funny about this around Boston, and this backs John's point up to some degree, is that their sample size for these games is much smaller than nearly anybody else because they've barely been in them. Right? It's like them and Memphis. Like Memphis has had no games either because they're just like, oh, no problem, we just kill everybody. Like with no need to be clutch when you're actually just completely stomping teams on a regular basis. So like the numbers are likely a little bit skewed along those lines. So I'm with you on it. And I would still say you can kind of see it in their personnel. It's like, oh, it would make sense that when things get bogged down, their team isn't like 100% made for a slogging half court kind of game because of like that on ball creation and ISO scoring, of which like Boston has really nobody in the top 50 in. Tatum kind of like barely cracks that, I believe, with no one else. Like that's, if you want to say that's the proxy for playoff basketball, then there are some definite issues. All right, well, I know we're going to talk more about this stuff. First, got to talk to you about our friends over at BetOnline. BetOnline's your number one source for all of your betting stats and sports info right now. BetOnline, this number's creeping in the Nets direction. It was minus 150 for the Celtics. Now it's minus 130, plus 110 for the series for Brooklyn. That's heading in Brooklyn's favor. So you want where the money's going? That is where the money's starting to head in Brooklyn's direction. Be on notice, everyone. Over on BetOnline, it's your continued source for all your sports wagering information, live betting. They have the playoffs, like I said, through the NBA, NHL, MLB underway. BetOnline's got you covered for everything. BetOnline's just got sports you probably never even heard of. They got, European stuff going on over there, boxing, golf. I mean, you heard of golf, horse racing. It's all there for you on betonline.net. You head on over to betonline.net right now on your mobile device. You learned all about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts.
Hold on, what golf? How do you spell that?
Now we're going to get back into this little thing we call basketball. We'll break it down on the back end for you. Listen,
I'll hit my European friends about that one.
You can always go with bocce ball if you really want to throw people off.
I'm turning to red over here. If you can see it on
the bottom line is though, let's get back into. So I'm going to start with you, Doug, from the net side of it, because something we haven't talked about yet coming into this matchup, and that is Jayson Tatum. Karalis mentioned there about blitzing, sending a lot of second guys Jayson Tatum's way. When we look at it from the Nets perspective, because the emergence of Nicholas Claxton down the stretch here, we know his switchability defensively. We know that Kevin Durant can take on that assignment. How often you want him to get taxed in that role is certainly something you can debate. But how do you see Brooklyn approaching Jayson Tatum defensively?
Well, hopefully not like they approached him in the fourth quarter the last time they played, which was to essentially allow him to score every single time he touched the ball. So hopefully they do a
gamble. Didn't work out.
They do a different strategy. No, look, I think we're going to see a very different approach on. I mean, they clearly have to, but we're going to see a very different approach on Tatum. One difference in this game as opposed to that game, and we talked a little bit, I think we talked about this last podcast on our podcast, was that the personnel for the Nets in that game is just not, there's some players you're just simply not going to see. Like Aldridge played half that fourth quarter. He's not even going to touch the court in this series and got completely torched. Like, so that's part of the problem. James Johnson was in that game. We saw a lot of Patty Mills down the fourth quarter. I'm not sure how much we see him down the stretch. So I think the personnel for the Nets will be different. It's definitely in crunch time, but even from the start. And I think they're just going to have to take a very clear path on what they're going to do. I think they'll show a lot with as much length as they can. They'll try to keep Durant away from the matchup as much as possible so as not to tax him. I'm with you on that piece of it. And they're just going to have to probably bring a lot of help. That's a problem for the Celtics because even though, like I said, they don't have a completely secondary dynamic scorer for as good as Jaylen Brown is, like everyone is like so capable. So it's not like you can really hide I mean, maybe Tice, I guess, if he's starting, but like there's not too much hiding you can do in terms of other defenders. And maybe that's the one piece you get away from it. Like, right. Like if it is, because you think Tice is going to start here, John? Like
I think that's the plan.
Right. So that's like the one piece where it's like, okay, you can probably send some other little help because that is not a thing that scares you as much as Time Lord does. And so that probably helps a little bit. And that's the other difference in personnel from that first game is that there's no Robert Williams in this one and there is Tice. So maybe there's a little help there. I agree with you that they probably want to keep Durant away from this matchup as possible, but they just aren't wing heavy. And I know we're going to talk about the race for health between Simmons and Williams, but it's just going to be a problem. Like the Nets don't have really functional, great defending wings outside of Durant, and that's kind of not something you want to put Durant in for an entire 7-game series because it would be at the detriment probably of what happens on the offensive end.
Can I throw a question?
Go ahead, John.
You guys just on the Daniel Tice thing, because I know that makes sense, right? What do you guys, if you had to guess, think that Daniel Tice would be shooting from 3?
I don't even want to look
it that way. Let's say some weird 37%.
It's about 36%.
Come on, I was right there.
Yeah, it's about 36%.
Cash prizes.
Now, career wise, he's shooting about less than 33. And in Houston earlier this year, he was shooting 29. Okay. But because of his role and the way he's being used, and it's only on 1.3 attempts per game, so it's not a lot. But the reason I bring it up is that he's somebody that you're probably going to help off of, but also he's capable right now of hitting those shots, and he's shooting a career high from 2 with the Celtics at just about 68%. So they're using him as far as offensively catching lobs and in the dunker spot the same way they were using Robert Williams. He's not doing all of the spectacular things offensively. He's not catching the lobs like Rob would like catch a lob and like dunk through at 3 soles, but Tice will catch and like maybe go down and go up the other way or draw a foul or something like that. But point is, just watch. If you're saying helping off of Tice is the way to go, don't be surprised if he hits a couple of shots and then the Nets have to be like, oh crap, that's not a place where you can help off of.
What I would say too, because if you're talking about inside the arc moving towards the basket, when Drummond's on the court, then I'm fine with that matchup and he can bang his big body against him and you live with those results. Now on the opportunity when it's going to be perimeter looks, that's when I anticipate, and Doug and I have talked about, it's like, what's the death lineup, the closing lineup for the Brooklyn Nets? Same thing like with LaMarcus Aldridge, where is Andre Drummond limited in what you can expect from him? But if you start to have Nicholas Claxton out there on the floor, then all of a sudden those switches, and when you're throwing other looks and you're bringing help over towards Tatum, you're still going to have enough athleticism, length, and quickness to get back out to Tice. And I mean, I'll be honest, at 1.3 attempts per game, great. Knock down 36% of those. I think we'll live with those results. And by the way, when you talk about picking your poison, it's okay. Give me Tice from 3 all night long.
I know. I totally get it.
And it's a fair point though, because it brings in a different dynamic that you maybe don't think about when you're looking at that matchup. Defensively, then though, going the other way, just to hit the stars for Brooklyn here, we've talked about a lot. Kevin Durant, it took a little bit of an evolution here for him. The blitzing defenses the teams were throwing at him. He said it in a lot of post games in the second half of the season. This is something I haven't seen at any point before in my career, the way defenses are treating me. Now, Kyrie Irving wasn't on the floor for all those games. Now he's back, fully got his legs underneath him. To me, and Doug mentioned about Jaylen Brown, it's not that he's not one of the better players in the league, but there's a difference between defensively, as good as Boston is, having Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving and saying, okay, what's the pick your poison here to get the ball out of their hands? And even if you mitigate it going to the second star on the team, this is where the adjustments that the Nets made coming out of that trade with Harden, Seth Curry, Dragic, Bruce Brown, stepping up from the perimeter as well. There's enough shooters here to maintain spacing and still be really dangerous at a lot of other spots. How do you see Boston approaching that?
Well, I think what Boston does is they just rely on their switching. And I don't think they blitz. They'll mix in the blitz. And I think the last game in Boston, if that was helpful in kind of guiding us a little bit, is that they mixed in the blitzes, but it's a way to throw them off. Like there's going to be a spot somewhere in the third quarter where they blitz for 2 straight possessions. But mostly, I think what Boston is trying to do is they're going to switch, just keep everything in front of you. Just keep everything in front of you. And you still have Al Horford down low who's a really great defender, despite what Bruce Brown said. You got Daniel Tice, who can still block some shots, although not nearly as dangerous and doesn't strike any fear in anybody driving against the Celtics. And you shouldn't, but he's, he can block a shot, but he's not Robert Williams at all. But they're going to rely on those guys to kind of erase whatever mistakes they might, the perimeter guys might make. But it's all about staying home on those ancillary guys. Do not let Curry, do not let Brown, do not let anybody else go off and kill you with a 20-point game and have KD drop 14 assists. You don't want that. You want to switch. You want to run them off the 3-point line, but you want to have them take those tough contested twos. And Durant's going to make plenty of those. But that's the way you keep them the most in check. It's just you're basically trying to decide what shots do you want Durant to make. And if it's those pull up, fade away, 18, 20 footers, great. We'll take those all day long. Same with Kyrie. And if they both score 40, that's fine. We'll see if you can hold the rest of the Nets to 30 and have Boston's offense score 130 of their own. So that's how I see things. I don't see, maybe we haven't seen any zone from the Celtics at all this year.
Right.
I wouldn't be surprised if they just here or there just pepper it in. Maybe start zoning out of inbounds, just to throw it in there and have Brooklyn be like, whoa, wait a second. Anything to throw you off for a loop. But I think mostly it's man up, switch, communicate, and don't get caught in rotation and really, really help each other. And if they make tough shots, they make tough shots. Don't worry about it. Go down the other end, just work your offense, and hopefully Boston's offense can get easier shots and pile up easier makes. And I think they'd be very happy to outscore Brooklyn.
And we've seen the Nets certainly struggle when defenses have switched up and given them different looks for a couple of possessions.
Specifically the zone, specifically the zone has given them specifically the zone has given them just like an inordinate amount of problems for whatever reason. Or sometimes it just takes them multiple possessions of zone coverage to get into like what they kind of want to do. So it's interesting because I know that Boston's so switch heavy that it doesn't seem like Ime would go too far away from that because they've been so invested in that specific strategy this whole year. And it just is funny because we've seen multiple games, and this is how sort of lesser defenses have slowed down the Nets approach. And it's sort of to their own detriment that they can't seem to always crack this in what you would think would be a reasonably effective timeline. But, yeah, I was going to say, because that is the one thing. It's not the one thing, but it's been very noticeable at times when teams throw zones at them that they just can't, they can no longer get reasonable ball movement. And the stuff where they want to flash guys to the foul line, or if they want to, roll guys down into the dunker spot, it just doesn't happen as effectively. So anyway, yeah, interesting. Because I think that will be a very interesting chess match. I think
that's the wrinkle that we want to keep an eye on. After this, though, I'm going to have Doug explain how smart I am when I touch back on John Karalis speaking to Horford and Tice and what they can do on the defensive end and maybe how the Brooklyn Nets can expose that. Before we do, though, friends, something that all the Brooklyn Nets, the Boston Celtics, every guy on this show, and especially Kyrie Irving as he observes Ramadan, once that sun goes down, grab yourself a Built Bar, my friend, because you're going to need some in-game boost. It's why when you reach for that 100% covered in real chocolate, big dose of protein for you. They even have an option to get some of these delicious puffs, which are known as protein-infused marshmallows. Absolutely exquisite. Get inside those stat lines, my friends, and you're talking about just 130 calories, only 4 grams of sugar, only 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. Here's the dirty little thing we hate to say on our show, 240 calories in some of those candy bars you reach for, and 30 grams of sugar. No, John. I know you wouldn't reach for them, nor would I. Mint brownie, coconut almond, and all the new delicious flavors that they have over on Built.com. If you can think of it and you think it would taste good, undoubtedly they're making it over there. And when you head over to Built.com right now, use promo code LOCKED15 and you'll get 15% off on your order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com.
Hey, gentlemen, do you guys drive?
I've been known to.
Yeah, we all drive, and sometimes we need things for our cars, trucks, golf carts, Doug, whatever we have with the motor in them. you want to go to Rock Auto for anything that you have a need for, any motorized thing you have a need for. Basically, whatever your car or truck, motorcycle needs. Don't bother spending 30 to 50 to 100% more at a chain store, which is impossible for them to have everything you need in that little place. It's just not possible. And heaven forbid you go to a dealership to buy a part. Rock Auto is a family business. They've been doing this for 20 years, so they're going to treat you right. Pop in the specs on your own computer. Don't waste your time or money going to the chain store. Just do it at home. They'll pop up this huge catalog with a lot of different parts at every price point. Whether it's complicated, I have no idea when I pop a hood what I'm looking at, but maybe you do, and you can go to Rock Auto and find whatever you need. I can do windshield wipers. I can do headlights. That's about it. And I can also go to rockauto.com. So when you go over there and you see all the parts that are available for your car or truck, right? Locked On in there. How did you hear about us box? It's the only way that they know that we sent you. Locked On in there. How did you hear about us box? It's an amazing selection. Reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com.
All right, so before we get into, obviously, the two key injuries for each side in this matchup, and why not even a little predictions, although John's kind of shown his hand here a little bit. You mentioned, John, the idea of what Horford can do, what Tice can do on the defensive side of things on the interior. Doug, when we think about Kevin Durant, the facilitator role that he's pushed himself towards, had 8.4 assists in the final month of the season leading into these playoffs. Do you think that the pace and new style of play, because my belief is Nicholas Claxton and even Andre Drummond, their roles, their movement, their pace of play going towards the basket can create a lot of problems for Horford and for Tice. And while they are certainly defensive minded and can anchor things in the paint, I can see a world where those two players, certainly Drummond to a much bigger extent with his passing ability out of the lane, that inside out basketball that they can work. And we've seen a lot of it between Kevin Durant and Nicholas Claxton, between Bruce Brown and Claxton, and certainly the 3-quarter passes, everything that Drummond's been able to do. That to me feels like a little bit more of a plus matchup, knowing the injuries we're going to talk about to Time Lord.
I will say that Bruce Brown made a major mistake here, an error in last game by giving the Celtics bulletin board material by questioning how much Horford and Tice were going to be able to handle his role in the offense, which Durant instantly wanted to. I mean, he might have just actually backhanded him because Bruce Brown, that is, because it's well, why would you even mention these guys' names? Why do we want to piss these guys off? This is insane. Sure. These guys are really good defenders. This is totally insane behavior. I think he was just a little out ahead of his skis because he had played really well. Look, I think the fact that the Celtics do range a little bigger, helps keep those guys, specifically Drummond, probably on the court a little bit more. It's always a little easier to play him off the court. I think if we see him playing more than 24 minutes a game in this series, something is probably gone a little haywire. That's my guess. And I think they probably would hope to at some point employ the KD at the 5 lineups to really, really push the action and just say, hey, you guys have a lot of length. We'll just go speed transition, whatever else. So I think that the size for the Celtics across the back line, relatively speaking, makes it a little easier to keep those guys on the court for longer, specifically Drummond. I don't see him being this massive threat against sort of what the Celtics do, just because he's just a little too slow for their bigs, I think in general. And that is always that just is a problem for him. And even if those guys aren't the most dynamic offensive players, they're just clearly faster than him. And so I think
so are turtles, but we're not here to debate that.
I mean, John, do you see that the same way? I'm also just who John thinks some of these other role players are, if there's someone else can emerge, but I don't know. That's kind of how I see those two guys kind of shaping up.
I mean, I if Drummond's on the floor, I basically expect the Celtics, whoever's got Kyrie, to get the ball and run a pick and roll with Drummond's guy. Good luck.
Yeah.
It's just pretty simple. I think as far as what role players do I think on Brooklyn?
Sorry.
On Boston side. Who do you think, obviously, just to wrap it up inside of it, we know Time Lord, they're saying he could return here late in the series, but who are the role players that fill out what Boston wants to accomplish in the series?
Okay. Yeah. So first of all, let me just talk about Robert Williams for a second.
You do what you got to do.
I just feel like he's going to be back sooner. I don't know why. I think the way they've been talking about him, I know that the way the series has been spread out, 4 weeks, it's a 4 to 6 week time frame. And they've been very much we're sticking to the time frame, but the way I hear people talking about it within the organization, I feel like he might be back sooner than game 4 or game 5. But that's just my guess. In the meantime, yeah, you're going to rely on Daniel Tice. Derek White is going to have a huge role in this, especially when they do decide to, if you do decide to go with KD at the 5, then Derek White becomes huge because you probably run Al Horford at the 5 and just hope that he's not like quick enough that he's not going to get blown by, that he's just going to have a little bit of length. And with the Celtics help, defenders there, that they can kind of just keep KD in front. But Derek White on the perimeter is going to be a huge asset. And the question is whether he can hit shots, but defensively, taking charges and all of that, like there are going to be times where KD dumps it off, someone's going to go in and Derek White's going to slide right in there and take a charge. And that's going to be, a huge game-changing play. So I'm looking at him. I'm also looking at Grant Williams, because Grant Williams has spent a very significant portion of the season as one of the best 3-point shooters in the league. Then he dropped off a bit. So he fell. I don't know where he finished the season. I haven't checked, but for a while he was in the top 20 of 3-point shooters, and especially in the corner. So if he can get that shooting touch back, then that just makes it a lot tougher, because if you're going to help, and if Tatum can get to the rim the way Tatum has been getting to the rim, you're gonna collapse, and then he's just gonna kick it out to the corners. And he's been great at finding those guys. And if it's Grant Williams and he's Mr. Corner Office and he's hitting those shots, then forget it. It's all about really this. If you want to boil this down to one single statistic, if Jayson Tatum averages 7 assists a game in this series, this is going to be a very quick one, because he's just going to be picking you guys apart. And if you can hold him down to 3 or 4 assists a game, then this could be more of a toss-up series. But Tatum moving the ball and getting it to guys like Grant Williams, getting it to a guy like Derek White and other guys in the corners, those shooters. The Celtics haven't had a lot of shooting, but Grant has been reliable. Pritchard maybe in certain circumstances, but I don't see him having a huge role. But if those guys in the corners can start hitting threes and Tatum is facilitating, then that opens things up. And if you get into a point where you don't feel like you can leave that guy in the corner, then that just lets Tatum get those shots at the rim, and you're going to see and ones down the stretch. And I feel like we'll see a much better closing stretch from the Celtics if that's the case.
Just real quick, Peyton Pritchard was 13th in 3-point shooting, and Williams was 16th over the course of the season. So two top 16 shoot. I mean, 15. He was tied with Drew Holiday. So 2 top 15 3-point shooters coming off the bench in Williams and Pritchard.
And this is where we talk about flipping on the other side of it, why Doug and I talk so much about Seth Curry being so crucial, because he's one of the only other 3-level scorers that can, with the ball in his hand, take the 3rd or 4th best defensive assignment on that end of the court and say, okay, I'm going to need to attack. And it's why his ankle becomes so crucial. If he's healthy, if he has full mobility, then he's going to be responsible to expose those areas of weakness. Bruce Brown is going to be responsible to punish anything that Boston does defensively, where they try to take away Kevin Durant, try to take away Kyrie Irving. Anything else you want to get to, Doug, here before we really dive in on predictions? Obviously, when you mentioned Time Lord just quickly and his return, walk into the warm waters of Ben Simmons, man, because by the numerous timelines you could go by, he's been playing for the past 3 weeks. He's been looking good. He's been out there on the court giving max minutes and efforts. But unlike
the Celtics, the Nets fans have to wait till Shams Charania goes on the Pat McAfee show to understand what the injury news is. That's basically how Nets fans get their injury news now. Not from anywhere else, not from the team, not from any local reporters. It's when Shams goes on his own show that's ends up becoming the only update. Right now they gave a timeline. The big timeline was first we obviously got the Ben Simmons emoji that says he's going to play on his IG Live. So that's the other way they disseminate injury information, is through social media stuff. And then the next way is that Shams says that he looks like he's going to be back between games 4 and 6. So who knows? I don't know. I don't even want to. I frankly don't even want to go too far down this thing, because it's who knows? No one ever knows. Games 4 to 6 is a huge gap. It's probably unfathomable to think that he plays more than 15 minutes a game. And so I don't know where Williams's ramp up would look like, but I think that I'll just sum it up this way. the Nets would probably need to advance past this series for Ben Simmons to start becoming like a real playoff factor. Like, I think that's kind of where I land going in. I'm happy. I'd be love to be wrong about that, but I just don't know how you can feel any shred of confidence. We could talk about predictions, but that's that's the Ben Simmons piece.
I don't see how you guys. I don't see how Brooklyn can put him in a playoff series. You're telling me a guy's going to sit out a year, go join a new team.
That's right.
And his first, coming off a herniated disc.
Yep.
And his
first, forgot the epidural, John. Yeah, the epidural.
The epidural.
Yeah, sure, of course. My fault. My bad. His first action is going to be the middle of a playoff series against maybe the most physical team in the East.
Sure.
Yep. You got it. You summed it up. Perfect.
Anything else, John? But this is why we always default to the second that he steps on the court, we're ecstatic. We're great. We'll see what he gives you, whether it's 5 minutes or 15. Awesome. But until it happens, it just seems fruitless to go through this speculation, because legitimately, you could have done this for the past month and a half, and fans, I know they're excited to see him, but at the end of the day, everybody has been consistently wrong, and then wrong again, and then wrong again. So show me when he's on the court. I'll be ecstatic to see it. And obviously, big impact if one or both of these players gets on the court inside the series. Let's tie it in a bow here. Who obviously you've laid out a lot of things, John, that could indicate this is a easy quote unquote series overall, relatively speaking, for Boston. But do you think that all of those things happen in that way? I see it as being a 6, maybe 7 game series where the Brooklyn Nets can take it. But do you paint this picture that you said over the last 30 plus minutes of being realistic that this could be a 5 game? They give up 1 against the Brooklyn Nets and get rid of this thing relatively easy?
I think that the Celtics can take this in 5. And the reason why, here's a couple of reasons here.
How do I take you out of the podcast?
mute this jerk, this Boston jerk. No, here's why. Because I don't trust that anyone besides Durant and Irving are going to score against the Boston defense.
Boy, you're underselling a lot of guys on the Nets, I think.
Yeah, but I'm also not underselling Boston's defense.
Oh, that's fair.
Which is still the number 1 defense in the league. And like, I feel like the other thing is I don't know. I'm racking my brain to figure out what are Steve Nash's adjustments. What do you, if there's something that doesn't work, what do you do? Do you I don't know, like, you can't start anybody different, what's the big adjustments? Like, the Celtics can go with Al, and you can go Grant Williams, you can't go big, you can go small, you can throw a zone, you can start blitzing, you can start doing all these other things. I don't see where Brooklyn has realistic adjustments that they can maintain to stop Boston. I feel like the Celtics will, like, this might be a hard 5 game series, but it's still, like, I think the Celtics can win at home. I think the Nets will win game 3, Boston will squeak out game 4, and then they'll win game 5 at home. And that'll be it. I just don't see how Boston how Brooklyn can stop Boston,
Listen, to your point, and then we'll go to Doug and we'll get out of here. But there are 3, I think, unproven options for the Brooklyn Nets to have interesting impacts in this series. And they're all, they're unproven, they're rookies, they're young players. And whether or not you'd ever get to that point, I think that's the difference. I don't think they'll get to the place where they need to think about what could Cam Thomas give you in a burst offensively if Seth Curry's ankle isn't holding up, et cetera. Like, I don't think we get there because it's not a viable option. Thinking about Kessler Edwards, who everyone likes and can do things defensively, but the idea that he's going to consistently knock down perimeter looks, he's shown he can. He's also shown that he can just be kind of streaky in that vein. So I think it's fair that the Nets don't have the depth pieces to go to when you talk about adjustments. I just think that it's the talent at the top, and I just think Katie and Kyrie, to me, they win the day. Which I'm resting on the superstar talent, and the first time in 2+ years where we've had both of them on the court together. Go ahead, Doug.
I'm sorry, but also let's not pretend that Jayson Tatum's not a top 5 MVP candidate.
No, 100%. Yeah, I'm not. This isn't.
I think that's what's being overlooked. Sorry, Doug. Go ahead.
Man, I was like prepared to like waffle a little about this, but John's confidence has me just kind of ticked off about it. So now I'm just going to go the other direction. And it's which is like the totally irrational way to prognosticate around something, which is
this guy's been going through some changes here lately, John.
Strictly on emotion. I do think that it's underselling Kevin Durant to a pretty significant degree to say that it's going to be like an easy 5-game series. Like where the Nets clearly have like easily the best player in the series.
Went to 7 against Milwaukee last year by himself.
For as good as like literally by himself, right? Like so I think that as good as Tatum has been, the Nets, I mean, maybe you want to, we will go long if you're going to disagree. So I'll just say, to me, Kevin Durant's easily the best player in the series. Probably the best your top 2 draft picks of who you'd want to walk into any 7-game playoff series with in the whole NBA would be my guess, to be something like that. Or at least that would be for me. So I think that undersells that. I'm not as confident to say like the Nets can do it in 5 going the other way, because like I said at the top, I think I waffled a little bit, but now I was going to probably say Boston in 7, but now just because John ticked me off around this, I'm going to say Nets in 7. And that's based on nothing else except now I was already rooting so hard for the Nets, and now this has only made it to me want to root harder, just so there's like one other little piece that we can like check off about John being wrong. So that's it. There you go.
If you listen in closely, you can actually hear Doug's blood starting to boil. We ran long.
This is what it looks like for me to be mad.
Oh my God, he's fuming. We knew an episode with John was going to be thick. It was going to be one that was jam-packed. We knew we were going to go a little bit long, but the good news is you now get to enter in to the start of this playoff matchup feeling like you have all the angles. If you're a Boston fan, we didn't dissuade you of your confidence. If you're a Nets fan, John's out of his mind, obviously. We will probably connect over the course of this series, as it's going to be a long one. It's going to go 6 or 7, as we all understand. John, anything that people need to know about finding you out there before we get out of here?
You can yell at me on Twitter at John_Karalis. That's it. That's fine.
There you go.
Find me there, and we'll go from there.
I'm gonna tweet out John's home address.
Exactly. Hashtag Nets World. Sick 'em.
Doxed over. No, I've already got Nets fans in my YouTube comments going crazy. So
we've had very nice Boston Celtics fans on our YouTube channel. They come in, they say, "Hey, listen, we love, everything's great. We think we can do these things." They're very cordial. So if the Brooklyn Nets fan base is not being a gentleman or lady over on Locked On Net Celtics, respect yourselves.
It's not vitriolic at all. It's just basically telling me that I'm crazy for saying it's going to probably be Celtics in 5.
I like it.
Yeah, that's just sound logic. What's the problem?
I kind of do. I will say, I know we're gonna get out of here. Like, I do appreciate that conviction. There's like a part of me that really respects it, because that's a really hard. Like, I'm totally with you on the rationale is fine, but I think that's not something you will see, and it's clearly not homerism. Like there's clearly just not something you see with like sort of punditry at this point around things. So I respect that. I disagree with it, but I actually really respect it.
Well, there you go. We respect John Karalis. Who knew? All these.
I hope to God you're wrong.
I am definitely hopping back on with them later on to make sure that they are aware of how right I was about this series. I just don't see Brooklyn stopping the Celtics. I see the Celtics stopping Brooklyn's role players. I don't get it. I don't understand how Brooklyn is going to stop the Celtics. The Celtics can outscore the Brooklyn Nets. I stand by it. We're going to find out, because the next podcast is coming after game 1. Next podcast is Sunday after game 1. Podcast all next week, including Saturday, because there's game 4 on Saturday. So I'll be podcasting on Saturday as well. Bonus pods. So make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts. You can get the show on YouTube. Please watch the show on YouTube. Very happy to be up around 5,200 subscribers now. Going to continue this march through the playoffs, see if we can get to 6,000 by the time the Celtics win a championship. Who knows? So if you are a subscriber, please share the podcast. Tell your friends. Tell everybody they should be listening to and watching the Locked On Celtics podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network.